the meeting to order. Mr. Coley, if you would note for the roll that all the commissioners, with the exception of Commissioner Hamilton, are present. We have distributed the meeting minutes of August 16. Does anybody have any additions or changes to those minutes? If not, do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
We're going to change it up today. The members of the public are going to go first. I know we've got several visitors here. You all are welcome to address us today, and you have 5 minutes, and I do time you for those that haven't been here before. And we look forward to hearing from you. And it looks like our first person to address us is Mr. Jim Golden. Mr. Golden,
Where do I?
you come up here to this lectern.
Oh, thank you. It's my first time. Appreciate your service to the community. Thanks, sir. I've been rehearsing this, so it should take 4 minutes and 45 seconds. Okay, somebody left the pistol up here.
That's fine. Thank you.
Well, let's see if I can do this. This is an attempt. First, thank you for listening to us today. I'm Jim Golden. This is an attempt to get KUB to pay for damage to my home caused from a loose neutral fire. After my military service, wrong piece, I come before you as a former KUB employee. I'm attempting to get KUB to pay for my house fire that left me homeless several years ago, but has been covered up by a corrupt city and legal community who have refused to investigate this incident thoroughly after the fire investigator was threatened and resigned. How many on this board of directors know what a loose neutral fire is? Okay. Burning someone out is a terrorism tactic that goes back centuries. There are many reasons that can be drawn from this as to why someone would want to burn me out. It may have started when one of my research projects outperformed the work being done at Oak Ridge National Laboratory and the University of Tennessee Engineering Department, and caused the canceling of an $800 million project slated for Anderson County. My research showed, according to scientists at Oak Ridge National Laboratory, we could provide a unit to burn low-quality fuels such as high-sulfur coal and even garbage to generate electricity cheaper and cleaner and more efficient in our own homes than could be done at the infamous Bull Run steam plant, and could be used to end pollution around the world. A UT professor gave me a tape recording and said, "Rock, keep this with you at all times. People are going to try to kill you over this research." And later, several attempts were made on my life. These are listed in the following paper I will provide to you. With this tape recorder, I was able to expose legal chicanery and corruption in our legal community that would rival Nazi Germany. I busted highway patrolmen, several law firms and judges, and even exposed corruption in the district attorney's office. I exposed a child molester at Child and Family Services and abuse that led to the suicide death of a teenage boy in their care. I exposed so much senior citizens abuse that even the ombudsman displayed anger towards me. But when I tried to start a conversation about allowing blacks into our Masonic Lodge, where several former and current KUB employees were members, a devilish fury was unleashed on me and other seniors that was so violent the master of our Masonic Lodge attempted suicide rather than suffer the revenge of exposing this corruption. Outraged, I brought this to the attention of the Grand Master in Tennessee, but instead of correcting this injustice, I was put on trial and suspended from Masonry for having complained against brother Masons. 3 times KUB employees miswired the pole in front of my home, resulting in 2 loose neutral house fires. First fire, I got stopped before it started, and KUB offered to pay expenses. The second wiring I found with a pair of binoculars during my frequent inspections of the power pole after the first close call and forced KUB to repair it. The third miswiring within that same year was after I had installed a new white roof on my home and damaged a major portion of the house, which left me homeless. The fire had awakened me in the night. The fourth attack on me involved a KUB employee engaging the ignition on an airplane. I was priming for startup without informing me, and I barely escaped being chopped up by the propeller. Another pilot who witnessed the incident said, "I think he's trying to kill you." Please read the following paper thoroughly and you will see that the KUB is indeed responsible for my house fire. Oh, and by the way, I'm paying $75 a month just to maintain a temporary pole at my home so I can keep the basement sump pump running for about 10 minutes a week and to use electric trimmers on my hedge. Yet I doubt I use 50 cents worth of electricity a month. Again, thank you, and I apologize for bringing this to your attention. Jim Golden.
Thank you, Mr. Golden.
May I pass these out? Would you like me to wait and do it later, obviously?
Or Liz can take them from you and she'll pass them out to
Okay.
us.
Let's see. Sorry for being so nervous. 73 is not working for me.
Make sure you work on that. Mr. Golden, the property that you're,
I brought plenty. If anybody in the audience would like copies, I'll be happy to share those. Oh, I brought 50, I think. Thank you so much.
Mr. Golden, the property you're referring to is the property located at 2314 Croydon Road.
No, ma'am, that is a temporary home that a church gave me to live in where people were terrorizing the former.
So what's the address of the property that you're making these complaints?
4113, excuse me, that's not correct. 4139 Skyline Drive in East Knoxville, near the intersection of Alt Street.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, and I apologize again for bringing this hate speech to you.
Our next speaker is Paul Laudeman. I may have mispronounced your name. If you would, give us your address, Mr. Laudeman.
2923 Buffett Road. Thank you for my comments. My name is Paul Laudeman. I'm a ratepayer here at KUB. I was a teacher. I'm retired now. I taught in East Knoxville. And these fee hikes, this is about the fee hikes, hurt me and my family. As a teacher, I know it hurts low-income ratepayers more. I taught their children and heard we may not be able to buy groceries. We have to choose whether to pay our utility bill or buy medicine from children. These increases also discourage people from conserving energy. They see that they're not saving much by conserving. Is it worth the cost of putting in insulation and etc.? Because the use fees, the flat rate fee, is so high. I'm asking you all to structure the fees to encourage conservation and efficiency. These fee hikes discourage that. Conservation should be good for people's pocketbooks and for the environment and our children and grandchildren. We, my family and I, are considering putting in photovoltaics, but this changes that math. Our payback will be much longer and it may not be worth putting in photovoltaics. Please stop increasing fixed fees and repeal the current increases. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Chet Hunt.
morning, everyone. Thank you for this time. I'm representing the Citizens Climate Lobby. I'm co-chair here in the greater Knoxville area. We're part of a national organization with the primary emphasis of advocating for carbon fee and dividend legislation at the federal level. That is our mission. And we're hoping that that type of legislation will move us quicker towards the transition to renewable energy and alternative energies to carbon-based fuels. And start increasing the demand for electric vehicles, which would be good for the utility. It'd be certainly a growing customer base as electric vehicles become more prominent. But like the gentleman before me, I'm concerned about these increased fixed costs. Because it does discourage people to be efficient, discourages them from installing solar panels, using alternative energies, because they're losing control over their variable costs. And those are being shifted to a fixed fee, and this incentivizes efficiency. And I know that this current rate hike for fixed costs is the KUB initiative, but there's one coming down the road, as we all know, TVA, which passes through the supply chain to the end customer. So that's going to create another increase in fixed costs. And so it's being counterproductive to the whole movement of addressing climate change and the increased carbonization of the atmosphere. I mean, the science is indisputable. I travel around and look at all these places. I go to all the glacier sites and on and on and on. And this stuff is real, it's happening, and we need to do something to counter this. And so shifting these fees onto fixed rates is a disincentive for that. And I encourage you to reconsider how you structure your fees. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Wolf Nagelli. And again, if I mispronounced your name, I'm very sorry.
Fine. We call him Wolfie in the engineering community.
Okay, well, I think I can pronounce Wolfie.
Thank you. Well, I'm Wolf Nagley. I live at 4425 Balraj Lane in northwest Knox County. And I've been a KUB customer for more than 21 years, and also a generation partner for 5.5 years with our solar roof. And I'm here, I spoke to you in February and urged you not to raise the basic service charges, and you still did it, which is a big disappointment. And also I asked you to try to convince TVA to not raise these rates any further, these base charges. And for the same reasons that have been very well pronounced already and by foregoing speakers. So TVA has always been, initially, like at the World's Fair and then earlier in the 70s, has been pretty good about promoting renewable energy, solar energy, etc. But in recent years, it's been very disappointing. Actually, I joined the Green Power Switch when it just was introduced right from the start, and I supported that for full all our use that we were consuming. And I've been disappointed in the way that has not led to actually a significant increase in the use of renewable energy. They have not promoted that program very well, and I don't know how much KUB contributed to that small success or not, but I think more could have been done and still can be done. So that's something that has sort of been fallen to the wayside. Almost nobody talks about that Green Power Switch anymore. And it becomes more and more important, as we all know, with global climate change causing a lot of trouble, not only in the coastal communities, but increasingly for our farmers around here also, because we got more droughts, longer droughts, and we got more intense periods of too much humidity, which is not good for agriculture. And so I want to urge you again to please refrain from further increasing and please repeal the last increase in the base charges for electric services. And also, please get together with other utility districts to work together to convince TVA to not shift the load more to the residential customers, but to be more fair. And that's really another big issue here, I think, is because you are people who represent us, the consumers, the customers here in this area. And we don't have anything that we can go to because TVA is not liable or is not accountable to a public service, public utility commission. And that's something I think that needs to change either internally with TVA, how they do that, or preferably, possibly, if there should be 7 states should get together and with their representatives in the U.S. Federal government try to change the laws, that there will be public service commissions that will give the customers more of a impact on what the actual accounting is. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Jim Hackworth.
Thank you.
And if you would tell us where you live, Mr. Hackworth.
I had to write that down, but I think I can remember. My name is Jim Hackworth. I live in off Clinton Highway, 6608 North Burr Road, Knoxville, Tennessee 37912. That's the murder house. Dr. Hiram Kitchen, who was the second dean of the University of Tennessee Vet School, was murdered in the driveway. So that's how I got the house. But I didn't do it. I was in the magazine business for about 35 years. I'm sure you've seen the apartment guide. You've seen my late publication was a home sure real estate publication. So I sold it out and I'm retired now. And of course, last year my horse died, Josephus. He died. In March, my little Shih Tzu dog, Costco, had him 15 years, he died. And then in April, my wife died. So I'm by myself, I'm retired now. So what we're getting ready to do with your fee increase is to put a burden on people that are retired, the elderly people, and the young, and of course some of the students that go to school here at UT. It's going to put a burden on them too. So what you're getting ready to do is to increase the burden on a lot of people, and then of course when TVA comes through with their grid access fee, I can't wait till next month to read my bill. I'm going to see that first line. It used to be around $6 10 years ago. Right now it's $17.50, and I suspect in October it's going to say probably 19. Am I right? Yep. So anyway, what we're getting ready to do is do a double whammy. You're going to increase the burden through KUB, and then sooner or later you're going to pass on the grid access fee from TVA. So we need to all be aware of what's happening in our world. That's all I've got to say. I know that TVA's monopoly, you're part of the monopoly, so there's not a whole lot of things that you can do. I mean, you have to get your electricity from TVA. There's no other source from it. So you're tied into a long-term contract, I guess, for them. And TVA didn't do us right. They had a way to get cheap electricity from out on the plains of West Texas. And of course, they passed on that. I don't know why. I know it's going to be a cheap rate. So anyway, we're all captive. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, sir. Our next speaker is Jen Crawler. If you would, tell us where you live.
Okay. I'm Jen Galler. I'm with Southern Alliance for Clean Energy. I actually live in Chattanooga, but my whole family lives here in Knoxville, and I'm going to read a comment from David Cross this morning. Good morning, committee members. First of all, I want to say I find it disturbing that you would hold a meeting such as when most people work and cannot get off to attend a meeting that affects us all here in the community. KUB, along with TVA, preaches conservation, then on the other hand, you raise the minimum charges so high that they negate any savings that may come from changing light bulbs to LED or lowering the as you suggest doing in the winter or raising in the summer. I personally had a 5 kilowatt solar array on my house almost 4 years ago. And now in 2018, any savings that I have seen with my solar is pretty much non-existent with the raise of minimum charges. I have come to the conclusion that the only way to slow your rate increase is for KUB to have competition, which is never going to happen, or completely off the grid. I would ask that you not raise our minimum rates.
Thank you. And Ms. Humphrey?
Hello, board. You all hear me talk pretty often, so I'm going to lend my voice to a couple other people from the community today as well. I have 2 statements to read. From Jodana Nabe would be the first. She is a single mom here in the community, and she said, I'm a single mom of a 12-year-old, and we moved from our parents' home to live on our own about 8 years ago. The utility bill was and always is a top priority bill, and no matter what, you have to have lights on, hot water, and a roof over your family's heads. I've also run my own business for at least for the last 8 years and have been able to make ends meet. However, many months of the year, the utility bill is a struggle, and many, if not all months, my bill gets paid late. Continuing to raise the rate is only going to keep making it harder for the working population. I work full-time and am a single parent. Every single dollar counts. Even raising the total cost as little as $5 could make it much more difficult to keep up and catch up the bill. Is raising the bill really necessary since TVA continues to raise their rates too? And then a second comment comes from a KUB customer and SACE staffer from DC, Maggie Schober. She said, Dear Board, we at SACE are concerned about high bills burdening customers across TVA, including right here in Knoxville. I recently relocated my family to DC from DC to Knoxville. Despite having similar square footage and climate, our electric bill doubled. This is driven in part by high fixed fees that I cannot control, and I do not believe reflect the true cost to serve me. As a customer in a dense apartment complex in the city itself. The other part that drives this is the fact, particularly as a renter, I'm stuck with older appliances and HVAC systems in my apartment. Thankfully, we're able to absorb the extra cost, but many are not so lucky. I appreciate the energy efficiency work KUB has done to date, but it is not enough. We ask that you double down on energy efficiency and reduce your fixed fees. Thank you so much. And if I have any extra time here, I would like to add, I also appreciate the work that's been done in energy efficiency and with KUB in conjunction with TVA. I think I've mentioned this plenty of times before because it was a project I worked on personally, and also, there's those health benefits that come as a result of that too. I think Adam's going to mention, but I have been working with Alliance House and with SOCM, and we've done some house canvassing here in Knoxville, and we're seeing disparities even from house to house with people who have an $800 bill on one side of the street, and you cross the street and somebody has a $160 bill. And houses that are similar, but the differences is the work that's been done through energy efficiency upgrades, and it makes a huge difference. And I would ask you all to be a leader, look for funds outside of just TVA and beyond TVA's initiative, and take that step forward to continue what Knoxville City has done and with energy efficiency in our community. Thank you so much.
We have done that, Ms. Humphrey, with
Yes.
regard to the Rounded Up program and our
Absolutely.
Project Help. So we definitely are looking at other ways to
Absolutely.
manage that.
Thank you.
Thank you. I think that maybe someone else came in after Ms. Humphrey signed in. So if someone else wants to address us, you can come on up and tell us your name and your address.
Thank you. My name is Adam Hughes. I work with Statewide Organizing for Community Empowerment. My address is 1119 Alexander Street, Apartment 1, Knoxville. As Laura mentioned, I've spent the past few months canvassing the low-income neighborhoods in East Knoxville with the Southern Alliance for Clean Energy and the Alliance House Community Development Corporation. In this process, talking to folks about their power bills, I've heard a number of horror stories. People who live with uncomfortable temperatures in their home in the summer and winter. debt that continues to rack family budgets. Energy bills that are in the high hundreds, even sometimes over $1,000. I've heard these stories a number of times, and I'd like to help bring some of those stories here to the board. Overall, what I see on top of that is a real sense of hopelessness. I say this not as an attack, only because it's something that I've heard repeatedly time and time again, but there is a real sense among people that KUB just doesn't care about these issues. There's a sense that organizing around them is a fool's errand because no one in this room or in a lot of Knoxville institutions does care a lot about what happens in East Knoxville. On the other hand, I've got to come to several board meetings in the past year, and I always recognize that KUB is receiving some well-deserved awards, from the storm management program to what was really a groundbreaking KEEM project. And because I've gotten to see that, I know that the ingenuity exists to deal with these issues. I know that it exists in this room and among the amazing, hardworking workers of the Knoxville Utility Board. I think we all know that rounded up, while really important, is insufficient to meet the needs of weatherization. The CAC bill assistance doesn't cover enough people, and that there need to be better weatherization programs that are accessible to low-income folks and renters who otherwise might not be able to afford other weatherization programs. And I think very importantly, it's that fixed fees are practically by design fall on small individual consumers and disproportionately affect low-income folks and folks who aren't some of the big users, but see those fixed fees going up time and time again. There needs to be a shift away from increasing fixed fees. I think there needs to be a new initiative that really focuses on low-income members of the Knoxville community coming from KUB to help deal with what, in my opinion, is our most urgent task, to make sure that the horror stories that we're hearing don't continue to happen, that people find real paths to lower their bills and live in comfortable houses securely. Thank you.
Thank you. If someone genuinely does have a $1,000 a month bill in a month, they need to get in touch with our customer service department, because I find that hard to believe.
Absolutely.
I mean, maybe it's a cumulative charge, but for a single month, that's a little incredible.
Yeah, and I have heard people say that, but I will make sure to have the customer service information to let people know to get in touch in the future.
And we have people on staff to also help individuals with those situations. So I would urge you, when you're having these discussions with people, to have them reach out to our customer service department.
Yeah, I would be happy, and I'll follow up to find out how best to do that.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you.
We're going to move on to official action now. I know that people don't like to get up and leave meetings while things are going on, so if you should want to leave, you certainly are welcome to. You're also welcome to stay.
Thank you very much for doing the public comments first.
Thank you.
Anybody want a copy of this? Not the one I read, okay.
All right, we're going to proceed with Resolution 1383, which is providing for a purchase power adjustment for the intended purpose of recovering the cost of wholesale power purchase for resale to KUB's customers and replacing the existing purchase power adjustment as set forth in Resolution 1065 as amended. And this is being heard today on second and final reading.
Commissioners, I'll remind you that Mike Boland presented a thorough presentation on this matter when it was considered on first reading last month. So today I'll recognize him for a more brief presentation in order for you to consider passing it on second reading.
Thank you. Commissioners, as you recall, last month we talked about this at length. This is a reminder, the purchase power adjustment is a mechanism that flows through wholesale costs from TVA to our retail rates automatically. So every month TVA changes their rates to us. That's translated through this purchase power adjustment mechanism to changes in the retail rates to reflect TVA's changes. Those changes are designed to not over-recover our costs from TVA or under-recover our costs from TVA, but to collect exactly what it is that we incur for TVA. The purchase power adjustment mechanism is audited every year to make sure everything's working well, and it's been in place on the electric system since the early 2000s, on the gas system for several decades now. So it's a real common mechanism. It's been around a long, long time. One of the charges that is we use in TVA that flows through this mechanism is known as a hydro preference charge. The hydro preference charge is the mechanism TVA uses to flow the benefits of the hydro system, their dams, to residential customers. TVA provides us with credits for our residential customers that we flow through to them in their rates. They also provide for charges for our non-residential customers that we flow through our rates. TVA's done this for many years. They've recently looked at what's occurring on their hydro preference charges, and they found they were giving away more credits than what they're collecting from non-residential customers. As a result, effective October 1st, TVA is increasing their charges to non-residential customers, leaving the credits to residential is the same, increasing charges to non-residential customers. Our mechanism, the current purchase power adjustment mechanism, needs to be modified to appropriately handle that change, and that's the genesis of the need to be here today to talk about changing the purchase power adjustment. Without action by the board, TVA's proposed increase in non-residential charges will actually flow through to our residential customers. So we have to make these changes. So with that, the other thing, since we're talking about the purchase power adjustment mechanism anyway, we went in and looked at ways to change some language, clarify things, make it easier to read. So there is a little bit of that. But fundamentally, we're here today because of TVA's rebalancing of the hydro credit mechanism. This will be, if you approve this today, this will be the second and final reading. It's going to effect October 1st, which is also the same time TVA's new updated hydro preference charges will go into effect as well. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
I know you can't speak for TVA, but I'm just interested in why they put why they add charges to non-residential. Is it just a decision that they want to keep residential rates as low as possible?
Well, first of all, they have a mandate from the TVA Act that the value of the dams go to residential customers. That's the basis of the whole thing with the TVA Act. But in order to do that, they basically charge everybody the same. And they say, well, wait a minute, we're charging everybody the same, but these are supposed to get benefit. So the mechanism for giving them the benefit is to credit residentials and to charge non-residentials on an equal basis. And TVA has been collecting about $250 million a year, giving away $250 million a year throughout the valley to residential customers. They've only been collecting $215 million a year, about $35 million a year imbalance that they're trying to correct through this mechanism.
It goes to the original purpose of the founding of TVA, to try to give the benefit to the residential customers.
As a residential customer, I'm delighted. but question was asked from the context of our role to promote economic development of businesses and so. But that makes sense. Thank you.
Any other questions? If not, do I have a motion and a second for Resolution 1383 on second and final reading? Are there any visitors that want to address us today on Resolution 1383? If not, Mr. Coley, would you please call the roll?
Commissioner Askew.
Aye.
Commissioner Herbert.
Aye.
Commissioner Pennell.
Aye.
Commissioner Brown.
Aye.
Commissioner Small.
Aye.
Commissioner Warden. Aye. And of course, Commissioner Hamilton is absent. Resolution 1383 is passed.
Mintha, you want to give us the president's report?
Sure, I'll remind you that when you passed our financial plan, you approved the sale of bonds. That has occurred, and I'll recognize Mark Walker to report out on the sale.
Commissioners, as Ms. Rose stated when we came before the board back in May to proposed the budget for fiscal year 2019, one of our funding recommendations was the issuance of bonds for all 4 systems to help fund the capital budgets. After board approval, we went to City Council in June and they approved it. We sold the bonds on August the 22nd and we closed on the sale last week. And today I just wanted to provide a brief report on the results of the sale, which does bring some good news. In total, we sold $80 million in bonds back on August the 23rd. And again, that does cover all 4 systems. That's $40 million for the electric system, $20 million for water, $12 million for wastewater, and $8 million for gas. And again, those funds will be used to help fund the respective utility system capital budgets for the current fiscal year. The bonds do mature over a period of 30 years, consistent with our long-term plan. They basically have a level payback structure and do fully retire in 2048. And again, that's for all 4 of the systems. We did have a fair amount of interest in the bonds. We received anywhere from 5 bids through public competitive sale for the gas and water bonds and gas and wastewater bonds, and then 8 bids on the electric bonds. And I'll go through all the detail there of the various bids that we received. But the rates were good, better than we expected. We budgeted a 4% average interest cost on each series of bonds, and it came in, you can see the range there from anywhere from 3.43 to 3.5, the average interest rate for the respective series of bonds, which when you compare it to the 4%, that does save $8.2 million in debt service payments. Granted, it's over the whole life of the bonds, but it's still good, and we're pleased to get those results. Now, if you'll bear with me a few minutes, I do need to go through each of the respective series of bonds. I will show you all the bidders. Starting with electric, for the $40 million in bonds, the low-cost bid was 3.43%, rounded up a bit, and the winning bid was Citigroup Global Markets on that. And at 3.426%, that does translate to $24 million in total interest expense over the 30-year life of the bonds. If you look at our total electric bond profile, our outstanding amount of electric debt, it now totals $322 million. And again, that is over a 30-year period. The electric system debt ratio is now 46%, which is in line with our 10-year funding plan targets for electric system debt. 47% of that will be repaid over the next 10 years. We do have requirements in the debt management policy that has been adopted by the board that requires so much be repaid over the following 10 years, and that is in compliance with that. And then the total outstanding interest on the electric bonds, the $322 million, is $133 million. For the gas bonds, 5 bids, 3.50% was low-cost bid. It was awarded to Raymond James. That does equate to $4.8 million in total interest cost over the life of the bonds. For how much do we have in outstanding gas debt now? It's $121 million over 30 years. So this is the lower level of outstanding debt across our 4 systems. That does equate to a 34% debt ratio for the gas system, and 58% of that $121 million will be retired or repaid over the next 10 years. For the water bonds, 6 bids in total. Low-cost bid, again, Citigroup Global. They were awarded both the electric and the water bonds, and they're at 3.46%, and that does translate to $12.6 million in total interest cost over the life of the bonds. And for our total amount of outstanding water debt now, it's at $199 million, debt ratio of 51%, and 37% of that $199 million will be repaid over the next 10 years, which is also in compliance with our debt management policy. And wastewater, $12 million in wastewater bonds. The low-cost bid was Raymond James. So Raymond James got gas and wastewater, and Citigroup Global got electric and water, as it turned out. Now, 3.5%. One thing that's sort of interesting on this is, unlike all the other bids, there was such a narrow range on this between the high bid and the low bid. The others, there were spreads of anywhere from 8 to 20 basis points. So somewhat interesting there. The total interest cost associated with this series of bonds is $7.2 million. And of course, as you know, our wastewater system has the largest amount of outstanding debt compared to all the other systems. And with this issue, it is at $525 million. Again, that's over a 30-year period, actually a little bit longer than a 30-year period. It goes out to 2050, so a 32-year period for the wastewater system. That does translate to a debt ratio of 62%. But we have, as you'll recall, we've talked to the board several times in our current wastewater 10-year plan. We are committed to bringing that down over time. And we will do that. It is projected to reduce to 52% by 2028, the final year of our 10-year plan. And we will actually reduce the total level of wastewater debt over time, in particular in the last 5 years of our wastewater 10-year plan. And then in closing, just reviewing the professional fees associated with the cost of issuance. As you know, we do use several professional firms to facilitate the issuance of the bonds. Cumberland Securities is our financial advisor. Bassberry & Sims is our bond counsel, and those fees are paid in accordance with established contracts we have with each of those respective firms. I'll point out, of course, we know we pay Moody's and Standard & Poor's to grade our bonds. But one thing that's interesting, you see the divergence there between Moody's and S&P. And this is sort of a small factoid, but actually on the electric and water bonds, we sold $5,000 less. So electric, I said 40 million, I rounded up a tad. We sold 39,995,000. And we did the same for water, reduced it by $5,000 because S&P has certain price breaks. So by doing that, we were able to take advantage of a price break and actually save $20,000 in cost of issuance, which I thought was pretty good. So total professional fees, $448,000. That's about 0.6% of the par value of the bonds. And I would say that is very competitive when we compare to other municipal issuers in the state, city, county, others, that we have pretty good rates on our issuance costs. So that concludes my presentation. I do think it brings with it good news, lower than expected rates, saves ratepayers money over time, and we were able to use a little bit of ingenuity and save on our fees a little bit as well. The last thing I want to say is, Celeste has in front of her our final official statement that describes all 4 series of the bonds, and there's a few sheets at the back that we have to submit to the state that goes into more detail about the issuance cost, etc. So that's there for your review. That's there for public review if anyone wishes. And if anyone wants to have their own copy of that, I'll be happy to deliver that. And Commissioner Word and I'll have yours tonight for by dinner time for you.
Celeste has turned around and wants to grab it.
You can take that one. It's all yours.
I'll let you. We won't have to wrestle for it.
I'll be happy to answer any questions you might have.
You know what, I think I know this, but really talk about our plan for long-term debt. You know, talk about how we can really pay some of this debt down in terms of our long-term plan as an organization.
Well, first of all, I'll start with each of our current 10-year plans that we previously presented to the board. Each of those currently do provide for debt ratios to come down over time and for the level of debt increases to get smaller over time. For example, right now for the gas system, that's actually going to see a reduction. Right now it's $121 million in outstanding debt. In 2028, that's projected to be $90 million. So you see an absolute reduction in that, with the debt ratio going down to 20%. Now some of the systems, the debt is still, absolute debt is still climbing a bit, but it's slowing down. Now that's our current 10-year plans. What we've committed to talking to the board about beginning next summer, next fall, as we go into our financial planning process, looking for any rate adjustments in the future, that we're going to revisit our whole philosophy about issuing debt. So with that comes our discussions on rates, our Century 2 programs, the level of capital investment. All of that will be forthcoming next summer and fall. But right now, that's what our plans look like. So there is, as far as debt percentages going down, in some cases debt levels going down, but we need to revisit the whole conversation about debt and other issues next summer and fall.
Thanks, Mark.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioners, I'm really excited about this. Everybody at KUB is excited about this, but we have broken ground and making great progress on a new engineering building at Middlebrook Pike. Recognize John Williams to update you on it. And he and I had a debate this morning, and I dare say I won the debate, right, John?
Ma'am, usually do.
It has been 44 years since KUB built a building on that property, so it's about time that we upgrade to a place where we have our operations and engineering employees located. So recognize John.
Thank you, Ms. Roach. Good afternoon, Commissioners. It's been a while since we provided you the last update in January. There's certainly been a lot of things that have happened with this project as well as other parts of KUB since then. As you'll recall, the engineering building concept was really born out of a capacity issue with our existing E&O building that's been there for quite some time. With the growth of all of our Century 2 programs and the work, certainly the number of employees involved in that has grown and has outgrown that building. The backdrop as well along the same time frame was the renewal of our HVAC system that you've heard about as well, that would require us to replace all the ductwork and systems in the building, which would require us displacing those employees. So by creating an adjacent connected space for our engineering staff that allowed for future growth in both those facilities, as well as to make room for the HVAC project to come in and ahead of the renovations for the operations building. At the last update that we had in January, we announced that Blank Construction was awarded the contract with about a 16-month construction schedule to be completed in July of 2019. Since then, there's been a lot of work that's been going on, and early on, we had the earlier presentation, we talked about a lot of the lead features and the exterior features of the building. Certainly the solar panels on the roof, the additional green space, spots for EV charging stations, a lot of things in those that help with the LEED certification. We thought today we'd break this update down into really two parts. One is going inside the building, just to give you some familiarity with how we're going to use the space inside the building in that connector area. And then at the end, talk for just a few minutes about the construction progress so far with some pictures that we'll walk through. Got a lot of slides. I'm going to click through them fairly quickly. Please feel free to stop me anytime with any questions. Before we go into that, I do want to orient you to this picture as we go inside, because I'm going to be pointing to some things east and west, north and south, and I want to make sure that everybody knows where I'm going. So first of all, the connector area and the entranceway into that connector area is going to be here. That's going to be the main entrance to the building. And the connector area is here. There's other pictures that will show it more clearly, but that's where that entry point is. And that will be on the east side of the new engineering building. It's oriented east to west. Currently there's the east side and then the west side along this wall. And when I talk about some of the conference rooms and offices along the west wall, that's where I'm speaking of there. 3 floors. Top floor, we'll start there inside. That's for electric systems engineering. Second floor is water systems engineering. And the bottom floor, the main floor, is for gas systems engineering and our inspector. So we'll kind of walk through that piece of it as we go. With each of these floors, I'll have a floor plan. And I promise you I'm not going to go into detail on the floor plan, but just to kind of orient you with where those are. And there's sketches as well to kind of give you a better view of how that's going to lay out. So the
John,
first
let me ask this question before you go on. Middlebrook Pike is to the right.
Yeah, to the south of this building, so yes.
I'm not very good with.
Yes. So yes, currently Ed Schaus is right across these trees back here going to Western Avenue, and then to the south is Middlebrook Pike. Yes, ma'am. Okay, third floor. Again, a lot of detail here, but I really want to draw your attention to the shaded areas in blue. That will be on the third floor where the entry area is into this space. Each floor plan looks really remarkably similar with small variations. But as you go in from that connector area into that bottom blue square, there's a seating area there, a break room, the elevator will be inside that space, restrooms, all of that will be nice and kept together on that particular piece. And then the entry into the workspace will be from this particular location here. This next slide really shows an earlier conceptual drawing of how that's going to look like as you move into that space past that break area. With each of these sketches, there's going to be some slight variations of what will actually happen in real life. We got some employee input along the way, and so for example, in this particular sketch, instead of vending machines there on that back wall, actually be 2 refrigerators. But in general, the shape of the space will be the same. That silhouette to the left is where you go into the workspace, and so we'll walk through there next on the floor plan. There are 2 sections of cubicles, kind of the north side and the south side. Those are all oriented toward the glass closest to them, so those, this group of cubicles here on the south side will be facing that south glass, so they'll be looking out into that courtyard area if they were to look up to their workstations there. And along that south, or that bottom area at the bottom, are some seating areas as well to encourage more collaboration, small group meetings, those things along that glassway. To the right is a workroom, print area, plotters, those sort of things for engineering, as well as storage areas for them to work from. The next two sketches are going to be looking from about right in here, back toward that break area where that silhouette is coming into that workspace. To the left is that workroom I spoke of. The next room to the left is that storage area, and then the far doorway leads to the stairwell and some conference rooms to the left, and again, that's for each floor. You can kind of see the faint outline of how those cubicles are set up. Again, we've reconfigured them slightly since that point, but in general, that's where they will certainly be. Looking the other way back to the west end of the building are the offices on each corner, as well as some conference space and some collaborative areas. One of the things that I think will be a very popular feature in this new area is those collaborative spaces, and I'll point them out here. Each of these areas is going to be an open, more modern design for space with more high-top tables for standing meetings or for being able to work in a variety of ways. Each of these rooms as well will have the appropriate technology to kind of help us move forward with mapping and collaborative work as we continue to do those things. And then in the upper right-hand corner, or on the northeast side of that building, are some more traditional conference rooms as well. One of the things we wanted to make sure we built into this new space was a lot of rooms for collaborations and conference and meetings that we don't have today in the E&O building. A lot of that has been converted into working space because of the capacity constraints. Moving down to the second floor, again, that'll be water systems engineering. Same floor plan. The only thing I want to point out here is in that connector area, if you were to look past the bottom of the screen, we're actually having outdoor seating and break area out there as well. I'll have a better picture up here in a moment, but otherwise, it's the exact same floor plan on level 3. Moving to the bottom floor, again, gas systems engineering, same floor plan with the exception of the shaded area, which is going to be for our inspectors. These are the folks that are in the field most of the time, but they do have some responsibilities in the office with mapping, as-built drawings, a lot of technology, equipment, things that they will bring back at the end of their shifts. So there'll be a space there that will allow them to have a touchdown spot and a working spot as needed for their work. And it's also situated near the stairs, so when you see it in just a moment, a picture at the back of the building is where they'll park. They'll have easy access in and out of the building throughout the day. Now on to the main entry and connector. This is one of really the feature point, I think, of the building. It's really a way to bring both buildings together. And I think McCarty's done a really good job of designing this space to provide a good connecting point, but also some similarities between this new building and the one there. This sketch really shows what that's going to look like as you walk in that main entry area. Again, the seating area, a walkway through the back, a monumental staircase that would connect the floors along with the breezeways as well. One of the design elements I mentioned that's new is that outdoor area will actually be on that coming off that second floor breezeway. This is looking over to the engineering building. You can see that blue highlighted wall there that shows those entryways. But that obviously will be a good connecting point between both the buildings, because certainly the employees in both buildings work together quite often, so this will be a commonly traveled area. Looking from the engineering building back south to the existing operations building, just another view down across there. One thing you'll notice, these windows here are not there today. The building itself has that concrete shell to it, but one of the ways in which we can help to replicate the design features of the new building with the old is to bring in those windows. There's an existing break room on the bottom floor already, but we're going to replicate that on the second and third floor so that they'll match going across that connector area. The back of the building really shows kind of how that's going to work. There's going to be parking back there as well, and all of our alternate fuel vehicles, electric charging stations for our electric vehicles will be back in this space as well. And then that area here will be where the inspectors and others that access this parking will enter in and out of the building. And in that second floor area for our employees to be able to get outside will be a feature at that particular point there. So a lot of work has to go into making all this happen, and there's been a lot of work that's been going on. So I kind of start at the beginning with our employee kickoff in February. This building is for our employees, so we thought it was very appropriate to involve them at the start of the project. So shortly after Blaine was awarded the project, they, along with McCarty, Ms. Roach, and others, talked about the new building. Really the feature of that was Ray Cochran, an employee who's been here since 1974, who actually started his career at our Fifth Avenue engineering building. It's no longer there, who moved to this building and remembers moving to this building. He was gracious enough to say a few words about opening up this building for us and looking forward to opening up the next one. So that was a good time for us there. As we moved on, before we could start constructing anything, we had to tear some things down, which was our covered parking area. The good news is that was repurposed. As you can see in the picture to the right, the concrete that was once the covered area and the columns of that parking structure was ground up and converted into backfill to the new building. So we were pleased to be able to do that, and that's part of the process of getting that LEED certification. As we moved into April, the grading had been completed, and you really start seeing the foundation work, and that base building outline, the foundation work was going, and even in the distance you can begin seeing the first walls being formed. So a lot of work being done early on to get that foundation and structural work, a lot of inspection, a lot of testing to make sure all those are done correctly. That structural work continued through the summer. That picture that was to the left before began to become a staircase early on, and then that staircase grew as the project went on, along with the elevator shaft that's here. And with those platforms they used for safety, actually started to look like miniature lighthouses. They just kept growing as you kept looking at them. But now they certainly look more like elevator shafts and staircases. The steel work began in August, and that was really the first glimpse of what the shell of the building was going to look like. You could really start to see and feel what that design was going to be, and that work has gone remarkably well to this point. In fact, today it looks much different. The steel work is mostly complete. The metal decking is in place on the second and third floors. They're working on that as we speak. The next step will be to pour concrete on each of the floors and get those floors placed. And it's in there. You can begin to see the outline of the shell of that entrance area as well. So a lot of progress being made so far. They've done an outstanding job. I'm also proud to say that safety continues to be a top priority for ourselves and also for Blaine. Their safety culture and ours seem to match up very, very well from day one. We see things the same way, believe in the same things, have the same expectations. They've taken a great interest in their safety meetings and their safety audits, and they've done a really good job. They've had one safety issue so far. It did not involve an injury. They promptly corrected it. It's been a great relationship so far. We're very, very proud of our partnership. Additionally, our project team, not to brag, has also done a really good job. Doug Reese has managed the project, done a fantastic job, along with many others that have been working on that. But they're there on site every day, engaged, working hand in hand with Blaine to make sure this project's carried out effectively, and that's gone very well. A lot of work still to go. The next phase is to complete that steel work and get those floors placed with concrete. In November, it should be undercover, which will be a good step going into that winter season, in which they'll finish the exterior by March. Just as a note, the operations building we've talked about with the HVAC work and all the things going on there, the beginnings of that will be bid around that spring time frame. And the purpose of that is so as the interior is being completed, the paving, the sidewalks, and the landscape are being done, that we work through that bidding process so that when substantial completion happens, we move the engineering folks over in July, we can then begin working on the operations building for that project and begin our next chapter of work over there. Thank you for letting me let you go under the hood with me for a minute on the engineering building. Be glad to answer any questions you may have.
Thanks, John. Very interesting. It's exciting to see something that starts from scratch and goes up that quickly. Good with me?
Yes. Commissioners, last week was an exciting week here too. We had our third class of Leadership Development Program graduate. We had the chair represent you there and spoke to the graduates, and I've asked Susan Edwards to remind you what this program means to our developing employees.
Thank you. I'm really glad to be here to talk not only about that program, but about some of the other things that we do to develop leadership here at KUB, and I'll try and get through this quickly, noting the hour. Certainly, Leadership development is important to us. It's part of our blueprint. We want to invest in a skilled and diverse workforce, and we value the hard work and commitment of our employees. One way we do that is to invest in them through training initiatives like this. And so it's part of our effort to really develop a strong bench of leaders at this company. When we talk about leadership development, we really talk about 4 different things, and I've used this in other presentations. It starts with talent. First is getting the right people in the door with the skills and abilities we need to do the work we have today and have that potential for the future. Training is a big part of it, and particularly with leadership, because we know that those skills can be learned, so it's important that we invest in them. Experience is important, so making sure people have a chance to see different parts of the organization during their careers here is really important. And then finally, alignment, and the blueprint helps us a lot with that, making sure that all of our leaders are pulling in the same direction. That together helps us establish a really strong bench so that when we do have leadership opportunities, we've got lots of people that we can pick from to fill those jobs. You've seen this slide before. You know this effort really began several years ago with the work we did at the senior level on the succession planning and leadership development process. We included all of our VPs and several key managers in that work. It was really twofold. It was to develop our skills for leadership so that you all would have people to pick from when it came time for you to make a leadership decision, and also to work on some strategic projects like our water resiliency, our blueprint development, our workforce planning, our grid modernization. All of those things were outcomes of that work. And it was intended to build our management bench. The other thing that it taught us is that we need to be doing that at other levels of the organization. So that did result in the leadership development program we just talked about and graduated last week, and I'm going to talk more about that. But it also built on initiatives that we have for leadership at all levels of the organization. That starts with the Learning Center, which is our training and development group in HR that is responsible for all kinds of training, whether it's computer training, regulatory training, anything that employees need to do their jobs today. Our business education series, which actually started as an onboarding program to introduce new employees to KUB. Over the course of the year, they come once a month and get exposed to all parts of KUB, which helps them see their role in the larger organization. We've now opened that up to all employees, so it's available to all of them to get that context. Supervisor training, which is really about HR essentials. That's a really important development over the last several years. We want to be sure that when we're putting someone in a leadership position, even if it's their first opportunity, especially then, like a foreman or a team lead, that they have the skills that they need to do that effectively. And a mistake that many organizations make, and we've been guilty of it in the past, is promoting your best doer into a leadership role without giving them those tools. So this is customized training for the groups when they have new leaders coming in so that they can know how to have those effective communications with their employees, how to make that transition effectively, and most importantly, when to call HR. So that's something that we've really built that first level leader with. Educational assistance is another key element, not only on the training side, but the retention side. For our high potential employees who want to advance their career by getting a degree, whether it's an undergraduate degree or a graduate degree, we have a program that will reimburse them for their tuition. And we have countless people who have benefited from that over the years, including probably about a half a dozen in our current leadership group that have earned degrees through that program. And then finally, the leadership development program, which is the group that graduated last week. This is our third class of leadership development, and I want you to know that selection process is really very well vetted. It's something we take up even to the highest levels of this organization. Individuals for that program are nominated by their managers or their vice presidents. There's a steering committee made up of people from HR, people from our senior staff, and former participants in the class who look through that list and narrow it down to a short list. But ultimately, the decision is made by senior staff because we recognize that that is an important element of what we do, identifying those future leaders and making sure we're making good investments in them. After they're selected, they go through some assessments. They do emotional intelligence. They do leadership development skills. If they are in a leadership role already, they have people reporting to them. We'll do a 360 assessment. So they all have that information to go into their leadership development year. The program itself covers several different areas: personal, professional development. That's things like public speaking, things that people don't often get to practice in their regular job. We try and build skills there. Organizational knowledge is a big piece. They learn a lot about KUB strategy, why we are the way we are, how we make decisions. Community education and outreach is an important part, and I'll talk about a project that they did in the community. also participate in the cost of poverty experience, and Commissioner Small was nice to join us that day. It's an opportunity for them to learn what it is like for our lowest income customers. It's a simulation-based activity, and it's really meaningful to the participants. And then finally, relationship building. That is one of the things that they comment the most on as far as how they develop their relationships in the class and also with people who are presenting to them. Lots of different learning opportunities. They do an individualized development plan. They work on that with their manager and just say, here are the things I want to work on this year, and they work together to make sure we're addressing those development areas. Classroom presentations, certainly. Community projects. They went this year to Imes Nature Center and built an outdoor classroom, and then they finished it early in the day, so Imes put them to work on other things on the property, and as I said at graduation last week, they ran out of work before they ran out of day. So really great effort by the class. We also get them to do their own assessment of how things are going and let us know what parts are working, what parts are not working, so we can incorporate that into the next round of LDP. And they take some field trips. They've seen a customer, they went to Lifetime Products and got to see that plant to operation. They also got to go see a TBA generation plant. So lots of different experiences to help inform their year. The goals for the program are pretty simple. One is diversity. We want to improve the diversity that we have in our leadership pipeline. So throughout the 3 classes that we've had, the people that we selected in this class have represented 20% minority representation, which is not quite twice what we have in the workforce as a whole. So that's an important goal. We wanted to have retention levels better than KUB's retention overall. And I will say in our first year we did really well with that. The economy continues to make that more of a challenge. So we recognize that we've got to continue to engage with these folks not only during their leadership year, but giving them those opportunities afterwards so that we can hold on to them. And then finally, the ultimate test is, do we have that strong leadership bench? And we believe that we have shown a lot of good results here. Half of the LDP graduates in all 3 classes have had either a level advance in their current job or a promotion to a new role. 2/3 of them have had some other type of leadership opportunity, whether it's assignment to a strategic team or maybe they've got a special project that's all their own. So we think that we are already getting benefits from the skills that they have learned. And if you look at our org chart, you'll see that's true as well. The number of boxes on this board that are below the level of vice president, there's 28 of them, and 16 of them are currently filled by people who are graduates of this program. Those are the folks in green. So we're putting them to work in their regular jobs. We're also seeing them advance in the organization and really help to serve our customers. And this is our new crop that we expect to put to work right away. We do get feedback from the course participants, as I mentioned. They really like the fact that they get to engage with members of executive staff, and that's an important part. There are several members of the executive staff on the steering committee. Many presentations are led by executive staff folks, and they have that chance to have give and take with all of us and really understand kind of how they connect to the strategic side of the organization. I mentioned building relationships, building an understanding of KUB, the corporate strategy, our blueprint. One of their most popular courses is the financial course that Mark leads. It is a budget simulation, and it's their chance to balance needs of customers and employees and our systems, and it really kind of makes all that real for them and the kinds of decisions you all face as a board. We also do roundtables, which are a little bit more intimate. They have a chance to have kind of one-on-one discussion with the most senior levels of the organization, including the CEO. I'll close with their feedback, and I think this really touches on that last box I had on the first slide, that alignment box. This is quotes directly from the participants, and you'll see the word align there. You'll see servant leadership. You'll see common goal. I think that what this tells me is we're really doing exactly what we want to do, which is developing leaders that are pulling in the same direction. And I'll also say, even if there's someone in this group that for whatever reason decides leadership is not what they want to do, or they don't move up in the organization, they're much more well equipped to lead at whatever level they are and be in alignment with what we're wanting to do for the blueprint, help build the culture we want here at KUB. So we think it's having a really positive impact, and that's my presentation. Do y'all have questions?
It's a great program. I've had the opportunity to interact with the participants, and I really think that it's something that I think sets KUB apart, because I think we're being very intentional with developing a great crop of leaders. And those of us that are on the board know that firsthand from the excellent leaders that we have the opportunity to get to know during the interview process for the CEO. I think I probably speak on behalf of all the board that I think after we went through that process, we have a greater appreciation for the talent that we have within KUB. And I think, as I told all of you all, I think it challenges you to be the better versions of yourself, because each of us can reach in and go that extra mile. And I think a program like this, inspires and motivates employees, because you have more loyalty to an organization that cares about developing you as an employee and as a better community partner. And I'll segue. One of the things that Mentha talked about at the leadership development graduation is she passed around a card to all the graduates and the 10 leadership lessons. And I'm not going to read them, but I really think that this type of feedback to give to people that may not really have an opportunity to interact with the CEO is one of the things that makes Mentha the special leader that she is. I wrote down a couple of quotes. Should get those to you to read.
This is not fair. This is against the rules.
But leadership is not about being the best. It's about making everyone else better. And I think that's one of the hallmarks of Mentha Roach. Also, leadership is about making others better as a result of your presence and making sure that impact lasts in your absence. That's Sheryl Sandberg. These aren't my original thoughts. I'm going to give credit where credit's due. But I think that Mentha's impact in programs like this leadership development and other things that KUB has established under her tenure are going to be things that her impact is going to be felt long after she concludes her service. And so there is a resolution today, Resolution 1386, to honor Mentha, who is concluding her service as President and CEO of the Knoxville Utilities Board. And I'm very happy to ask Mr. Coley to read that.
It's my pleasure. Resolution 1386, a resolution honoring Mentha E. Roach, who is concluding service as President and Chief Executive Officer of the Knoxville Utilities Board. Whereas Mentha E. Roach has served faithfully as President and Chief Executive Officer of KUB for 15 years and as a KUB employee for 26 years. And whereas she was the first woman to hold this position in KUB's 79-year history. And whereas Mentha joined KUB in 1992 following her tenure as Director of the Knoxville Civil Service Merit Board, serving as Manager of Human Resources and Chief Administrative Officer before her appointment as President and CEO. And whereas throughout her career at KUB, Mentha has embodied the values reflected in the KUB blueprint to serve KUB's customers, improving their quality of life by providing utility services that are safe, reliable, and affordable. And whereas she has inspired positive and significant change in KUB's safety culture and prioritized safety of the public and employees as KUB's highest ethical responsibility. And whereas, with her commitment to meet the needs of KUB's customers now and in the future, the Century 2 Infrastructure Management Program was established to ensure sustainable life cycle asset replacement for all 4 utility systems. And whereas, with her leadership, KUB is recognized for giving back to the community it serves with implementation of programs during her tenure, including Rounded Up to assist income-limited customers, and Vol Time, through which employees provide hundreds of hours of volunteer service to community organizations. And whereas she has led by example in serving others and has devoted herself to community service activities, including with the United Way, the YWCA of Knoxville in the Tennessee Valley, Volunteer Ministry Center, Friends of Literacy, the Girl Scouts of America, the University of Tennessee, and many others too numerous to mention. And whereas her definition of KUB's stewardship responsibilities has included a commitment to the environment, resulting in KUB being a leader in green power, efficiency improvements in KUB's operations, and use of clean fuels in KUB's fleet. And whereas her leadership has included focus on workforce diversity, establishment of the Leadership Development Program, and succession planning to ensure the future success of KUB for the benefit of its customers beyond her tenure as President and CEO. And whereas her positive contribution to the community is recognized far beyond KUB, with awards from YWCA's Tribute to Women, the University of Tennessee's College of Business Administration, Leadership Knoxville, and Junior Achievement of East Tennessee, among many other honors. And whereas this board and KUB's employees have deep and sincere respect, admiration, and appreciation for all that Mintha has given and accomplished to serve others. Now, therefore, be it resolved by the Board of Commissioners of Knoxville Utility Board, Section 1, that this board gratefully acknowledges and celebrates the dedicated service and accomplishments of Mintha E. Roach and her leadership at KUB for the good of the community and the legacy she leaves us all by virtue of her commitment and service. Section 2, that this board genuinely regrets that her tenure as President and CEO is concluded. Section 3, that this resolution shall take effect from and after its passage and that a copy shall be provided to Mintha. Signed by all the commissioners.
I need a motion and a second on Resolution 1386 on first and final reading. And I think we may have some discussion, but I'm going to ask for any visitors that want to speak to this resolution before we talk to our fellow board members.
Just on behalf of the University of Tennessee, I think your largest customer, we just very much appreciate everything Mintha's done in her leadership. It shows all the way down through the workforce to the everybody that's working on the ground. So very much appreciate all you've done. Thank you.
Thank you so much for being with us today. Mr. Coley, let's go for.
I'd like to discuss this.
Okay.
Are you going to vote no first? Yes or no?
We're going to hold that off.
All
Okay.
right, we're gonna hold that off. You came in at a really difficult time. Had a death of the CEO, had a death of an employee the week that she started. Had conflict with the city. We had various utilities were in different silos, not talking. You have been a transformative force. This is where the embarrassment part comes.
I've already gotten there.
Okay.
We passed that.
You know, transformative force is a pretty powerful statement, but I think it applies. Think about building an airplane for you engineers. While it's in the air, everything has to happen. Everything has to go on from day to day, and to help transform this organization that was in a difficult time. It's a pretty amazing thing. But I think one of the most impressive things is that all along the way, as CEO and even before, you surrounded yourself with rock stars. I mean, it's. I think Celeste mentioned it. You know, I think we're all just kind of every time we interact with someone, we're just so impressed, and that's a real talent to surround yourself with rock stars who just make it happen and do it in such a thoughtful way. To be a transformative force, but also have the admiration of the people that you work with is really unusual. There's a whole lot of hard decisions had to be made. So to survive that and still have, I remember when I first started as a commissioner, you know, I mean, almost immediately, whether it's from a KUB person or from the community, it's like, oh, Linda Roach, she's so amazing. To have that admiration. And to be a great leader. You know, we talked about leadership just now at the leadership program. They're leaders, and then they're great leaders, right? And you're a great leader, and a great inspiration. Beyond KUB, you've sort of been this quiet, I mean, we listed off some of the organizations, but you've been this quiet force of great change throughout the city and the region. You know, lending some of your talents to some of these organizations, not always taking the credit, but to have that kind of impact is just kind of mind-blowing. You've got great talent. You're thoughtful, you're deliberate, you're a great listener, you're a great steward. There's a culture of stewardship that you can just kind of feel it, just in the conversations and what people say. That's unusual. You don't see that everywhere. You don't see that in companies, you don't see that in governmental agencies as much. Just everyone, you know, you can see the pride on Mark's face when he's like, I saved $20,000. But that's a big deal because it's a monopoly. That's an area that we're subject to, can be a subject of abuse. And so to treat all of KUB's assets and ratepayers as if it's her own money, and we're making decisions almost as a family about how we spend and being good stewards. You can tell that she cares. And again, that's a cliche, but there's a great cause here. There's a great mission here. And you kind of, it's not just talking points, right? There's a great cause here to deliver these vital services in a thoughtful and responsible way. You care about your employees, and that comes through. You care about the community, and that comes through. Doing the right thing is hard, because a lot of times you have to choose between good and good. It's a very difficult thing, and you've guided us so well. It's a tough job. Think about 4 utilities. That's actually pretty rare. Most people don't realize. Being a CEO of 4 utilities is a real challenge, and they're all very different. There are not very many organizations like this nationwide. And you think about all the responsibilities. You know, you've been on call all the time. I mean, literally all the time. As CEO and even before that. So there's a great thanks to John Roach, because you had to live with...
He has to live with me.
All of that, you know, the 2 a.m. texts, that, you know that and Gabe, you've got that coming up. And I talked to Mintha recently about that. It occupies a great mind space. It occupies your thoughts, and it takes over because you feel that burden of responsibility for everybody in the room, whatever room you're in. So thank you for taking on that responsibility. Personally, I'm really sad. I'm really sad. But I'm happy that this will create the space for you to go and do other great things. I can't wait to find out, what great initiatives you've gotten involved with and are pushing through. And finally, I've gone on too long. You're our Pat Summit. And we kind of...
I do have that stare occasionally.
I know. I've been the beneficiary. And you've been great to tolerate my dumb questions but if Bill Elmore was our General Neyland, you're our Pat Summit, and there is no replacement. So I just want to end by saying thank you for all the championships.
Well, John, you said one thing well, you didn't say one thing, and I'm glad you didn't say it, actually, and that is, as a woman, I so thank you for all those words. They're wonderful and they're true. But truly, as a woman, when I moved here in 2003 and became a part of this business community, your name came up quite a bit. And I'd say I have noticed, have seeked out women mentors kind of late in my career. And you are one of them that I'm so thankful this crossed my path, so thankful to be here on this board and to see such a great example of a strong woman in business. And I'll say that also to my fellow board members too. I mean, it's just wonderful sitting here and being a part of your world and the good things that you've accomplished. So thank you.
One of the newest board members here. I just absolutely respect you, Menta. Your integrity. John said a lot of things that I would have said, but your integrity, just who you are as a person. You always think about customers first and your employees first, and that's truly a hallmark of a great leader. And so I've been honored to serve with you over the last year and a half, and I've learned a whole lot of lessons about leadership and what I'll take back to what I do and the people that I lead in terms of how to make sure that they're taken care of and we put them first. And so just thank you for the mentorship, thank you for the friendship, and I just respect the work you've done here. So thank you.
I think it's great you get to hear some of this stuff before your funeral. David Brooks wrote an essay about 3 years ago in the New York Times where he said of all of us that there are two kinds of virtues. There are resume virtues and there are eulogy virtues, and eulogy virtues are a lot more important. And I think I can say that I don't know of any other human in my life who lives a life based on those eulogy virtues better than you. We have the great fortune of being able to, in addition to being colleagues, to be dear friends. And I will just quote my wife and keep it really short.
I hope it's
Be careful.
I'll do the PG version. She said Menta Roach is the best person I know, and I agree, and I think a lot of people agree with us.
As the newest member on this board.
Which is why you get to sit beside me.
I told her this when I found out that she was retiring, and I thought she did. Because from the very beginning, I knew that you're a phenomenal person, phenomenal woman, phenomenal leader, and I just want to rub you like
All right, Mr. Mr. Coley. Resolution 1386, would you please call the roll?
Commissioner Askew,
Aye, enthusiastic.
Mr. Herbert,
Aye.
Mr. Pennell,
Aye.
Mr. Simpson Brown, Mr. Small,
Aye.
Commissioner Worden.
Aye.
Resolution 1386.
Can I say something, please?
Yes.
Well, I want you all to acknowledge that I was patient and listened, because those are two virtues that I don't really have. Even though John gave me credit for being a good listener, that is not something that the rest of the people in this room, and particularly my husband, would agree with. On that little card that Celeste referred to, there is number 6 or 7, and it says, "Get out of the way of the people who are doing the real work." And that is the truth about how we have gotten where we are. You all give me all this credit, but it's all these people in this room and everybody else at KUB. So I don't deserve all the accolades. I knew I would do this, particularly when John started talking. But anyway, I don't deserve it. It really is a representation of everybody who's come before me, the board who's supported me before you, as well as you, these folks over here, and these folks back here. So there's one person in this room who's put up with me the most, other than my husband, and that's Karen. I sit at my desk and I go, "Karen!" And she goes, "What do you want now?" And then there's Liz, who I'm always screaming to about my computer. And then there's Debbie, who says, "Hi, Ladybug, how are you doing today?" And she just brightens my day. So to the ladies who kept me out of trouble and kept me safe, and everybody in the room, I say thank you. And to my husband and my boys, I couldn't have done what I do without John doing the laundry, so. I say thank you very much. It's been an honor and a privilege.
We've got one more thing to share today. The employees of KUB wanted to thank you, and here we go.
Thank you for teaching us everything you know.
Thank you for helping us put our customers first.
Thank you, Linda.
Thank you, Mantha, for riding out the storms with us.
Thank you, Linda. Both of the women and men of system operations would like to thank you for your guidance and your support.
Thank you, Mantha.
Thank you for always caring about us.
And I just want to say, we are really in debt. That is indebted to you.
Thank you, Linda.
Thank you for having our back in these trenches.
Thank you, Linda. Thank you for your support. Thank you, Linda.
Thank you for always treating us right.
Thank you, Linda.
Thank you, Mantha, for our new home.
Thank you, Linda.
Thank you for strengthening our IT support skills.
Thank you, Linda.
Always do the right thing.
Thank you for your focus on ethics.
Thank you for showing us how to be true servant leaders.
Thank you for setting the bar so high.
Thank you for being a great mentor, leader, and friend.
Thank you, Linda.
And we'll try not to mess it up.
Well done. Thank you all very much.
All right, well, from one last thank you, Mintha, but I have this announcement. Following the adjournment of this meeting, the board will have a lunch session across the hall that's open to the public, and this meeting